Okay, so we still have to discuss some of the news coming out of Latin America and the debt crisis in Venezuela, a little bit about Nicaragua as well. So I've saved up a few of the stories and we'll try to move through them as quickly as possible. First of all, it appears as if an attempt by the Venezuelan oil company PDVSA has to recover some of the damages from what they call public corruption, which is public corruption, has failed. They tried to construct this trust that would sue in court against a group headed by, I believe, Glencore is what it's called, and it did fail. So this group, Glencore and Lukoil, were sued by PDVSA's U.S. counsel, and apparently the magistrate, Alicia M. Otaso Reyes, found that the trust failed to establish its standing, you can see here, and recommended the dismissal of the complaint. So PDVSA is in deep shit right now. I'm not sure what sort of, it says here $5.2 billion was the lost award that they wanted to recover, and it's not going to happen, at least not for the moment, although I don't know how this gets reversed or not. And in the meantime, another group of creditors is demanding a $1.5 billion in payment. It says here a group of creditors has demanded payment on a $1.5 billion Venezuelan bond that is in default. Their lawyers said on Monday, kicking off a long-awaited showdown between creditors and the crisis-racked OPEC nation. President Maduro's government and state-owned companies own nearly $8 billion in unpaid interest and principal following this year's default on bonds amid a hyperinflationary collapse of the country's once wealthy socialist economy. So I think that what's happening there, we have reason to fear happening in other places, maybe even in our country. Look, these governments, they continue to play Russian roulette with basically the public trust in their fiscal capabilities. And some people believe that the theory of the monetary theory of capitalism doesn't hold, and then in reality governments can just issue currency as much as they want, and if needed, just allocate assets as they want. Well, in this case, it can't. People try to say, well, external factors are what really has brought down Venezuela. Unfortunately, those external factors they're partially a result of Venezuelan decisions. By the way, we did discuss something like that earlier on a podcast I had with Sun Fei-yang and Arjun Sinha and Just My Stupid Opinion, but because of some real snafus that went down, I ended up deleting it by mistake as well. So I'm sorry. Apologize to Arjun. He worked really hard to do it. Maybe we'll have to redo it. It's really a shame. But the debt crisis in Latin America is real, and these people who are running the country, they're not. It doesn't look like they've come up with a plan to dig themselves out of it anytime soon. You also have this issue where the petro is being forced onto pensioners instead of the bolivar. Now the bolivar has reached 1,000,000% inflation. So to think about that, 1,000% inflation would mean that the money that you hold, if you were just to hold on to a 10-pound note, let's say you're British, you have a 10-pound note. Well, in a year, if there was 10% inflation, it would be worth a tenth of what it was at the beginning, right? It would cost 10 of those notes more to buy, let's say an orange or something than it had before. That's what inflation is. So imagine 1,000,000%. That is insane, and people have nothing. They have no recourse from it. So instead of actually dealing with the problem, the government is now forcing the petro, which is not really admissible in many places in Venezuela, as a payment method for pensioners. Okay, so that's what I would say is the sign that the country is really in the throes of a complete and utter disintegration, which we'll see more of. There's been some geopolitical saber rattling between the USA and um, and Venezuela in the past couple of weeks. I think that if the U.S. waits long enough, Venezuela will eventually, there will be no need for an invasion. They're basically uh, bleeding themselves to death. Nicaragua, they are shutting down. I believe they shut down La Prensa, which is one of the last free press outlets in Venezuela. So it's getting worse in Nicaragua. Sorry. So it's getting worse over there. So yeah, it's bad news for some of the countries that are left on the ALBA block of Latin America. That's the more far left group of nations over there in Latin America. So that would be Venezuela. Ecuador, I think, is still technically part of it, although they're drifting rapidly away from them. Bolivar, or sorry, Bolivia. I'm kind of tired, and Nicaragua, as well as Cuba, of course. So those countries are in really a crisis mode because none of them are doing very well financially. They're all dependent on China to a certain extent, as well as a number of other countries that happen to be able, that they happen to be willing to do business with them, such as Russia, Iran. Um, so we'll see what happens. It's not a good time to live in any of those countries. So please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and comment when it uploads. Please like me on, subscribe to me on BitChute, on Kogoscope, Minds.com, Gab, as well as Twitter and Facebook if you would prefer to use those. All the information is in the description, and have a happy Wednesday.